record here for.
Oh,
All right. So, Kacie, thank you so much for taking the time to be on here today and just to share a little bit of your journey that I know will help inspire and encourage other women just like you. Because I think a lot of times, like when we're seeing somebody share, their story or their journey, we think, oh, that could only be them. Like that doesn't apply to me and my circumstances or my complicated medical history. And so I wanted you to share because you have quite a story. And I know that it's going to encourage and really just inspire other women who might be kind of where you were before we started working together and before we started kind of addressing these issues. So, would you mind sharing a little bit about yourself and where you were, let's say, like 4 or 5 months ago before we started working together? Take off my glasses here.
sure. Absolutely. I guess my story kind of begins when I guess about 8 years ago now, when they removed an ovary and a fallopian tube, and then after that, I was never like fully right, and went through like a lot of infertility issues and fertility doctors, and the doctors all said, like, not going to have any children. It's just not going to happen. You have a very low chance. And then I actually had one doctor tell me that in a physical, she was like, I don't think that's really true. I think it's just your hormones. So I started looking into hormones and what all of that looked like. And I actually did another program, like not this one, but it was very
Mhm.
weight driven. It was to lose weight. It was
Okay. Yeah.
very heavy on supplements, like creams, like hormone creams. Like it was just something that I don't feel like I could really sustain financially. So it was just a really big
Right.
kind of a letdown, because like I lost a lot of weight. I lost about 35 pounds on that program, and like I learned a lot about my body at that time. And I went back to the doctor, and I kept saying, like, I have these really heavy periods, I have these really intense cramps, I'm not really sleeping very well. It's just something that, like, there's still something that's missing.
Right.
And at that time, they actually found, I ended up in the ER. They found a endometrioma in
Oh,
my uterus, and they said, one of the only options to get rid of that is surgery or birth control, like to kind of lessen, like, because it was a 7 centimeter endometrioma, like it wasn't a small little thing in there. Um, so I ended up going with the surgery. They removed all of the endometrioma that I had. I ended up being diagnosed with endometriosis after the surgery. Um, they had they told me like my only option was to go on birth control to like
mhm.
even lessen some of the symptoms that I was having, like. And
Right.
endometriosis is a very like kind of stubborn thing that just doesn't
Right.
really go away. So I started looking into some natural ways, and that's kind of how I found this program. Just more so because like you shouldn't have pain like on your periods
Right.
at all. And like I had such intense cramps. I
Yep.
had such like and it wasn't always at my period. It was like
Right.
sometimes in the middle of it, sometimes in the middle of my cycle, sometimes just randomly. And like it just you shouldn't have you shouldn't have
Right.
nobody should deal with that kind of pain.
Right.
So that's kind of how I found this program, because it relied more on natural, like your natural ability um to help alleviate your symptoms.
Right.
So
Absolutely. I
yeah.
love that. And I totally forgot about the other program that you did. And I remembered when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, we had that conversation.
Yeah.
Because it really, one, you're in a unique position because you've already tried so many things, right? And so I think there's that automatic, maybe you didn't feel this way, but I think there's that automatic kind of thought process of like, okay, but I've already done so many things. How could this really be different? And my medical situation is so complex that every doctor I talk to is telling me it's not resolvable, and or I'm not going to get that result that I want. And so you end up feeling like, okay, do I really just have to surrender to living in pain all the time? Or is there really something else that we can do differently? And so, it's one of the reasons why I do think that the Happy Hormones program is so successful is because we address the root issues. Now, endometriosis, just for those of you, who don't know, whether it's an endometrioma or endometriosis or, anywhere in that spectrum, is essentially estrogen dominance that creates tissue growth in tissues. So for a woman, that would be the uterus, or the ovaries, or surrounding, like, the surrounding tissues. And so when we address the reason why a person has estrogen dominance, primarily because the liver detox pathways are not opening up properly, then whether or not you have estrogen dominance that just gives you sore breasts before your period, or you have, abnormal tissue growth, that is, when we address that issue, it resolves all of it. Um, and so we're really working with you individually to say, okay, how do we get you, Kacie, to that end goal of painless periods? Because you're right, you shouldn't be having pain before your period. And everybody who's worked with me knows that, like, you shouldn't have pain, because it's not normal. And so I just wanted to make sure, when you were in that place, having tried everything that you had done before, what kept you motivated? Like, what kept you kind of moving forward? Because I think that's something that a lot of women struggle with. Not, and it's not for lack of trying. It's just that typically they feel like, I've tried everything, so what's the point, So what do you feel like for you kind of kept your hope alive?
I think a lot of it was the fact that I had already tried so many other things. Like I was just I don't feel like I could have done it on my own.
Mhm.
So I felt like I needed that person that believed in me, that kept saying, keep going. It's, like, this will work out for you. Um and honestly, in the support of my husband and family, like, they were huge. Because a lot of times, like, you want to pick up a brownie and eat a brownie for dinner, and
Yep.
that's not, I mean, it's not good for anybody, but like, a lot of it was like changing your mindset to,
Right.
like, okay, I'm gonna fuel my body and not, like, feed it with disease, I feel like, is
Yep.
what I was in the back of my mind.
Right.
So that was just kind of a huge thing. And knowing and hearing a lot of the outcomes of people saying they don't have cramps during their period, and I'm like, is this, like, for real? So that, I feel like,
Yeah.
I needed, it was almost like I needed to see it for myself. So that's kind of what
Yep.
kept me motivated and kept me going. And it
Right.
wasn't a lot, like, there wasn't a lot of extra supplements that I had to go out and buy and get.
Right.
And it was just because I feel like that was the downfall from the other program, is that it was so heavy, like, you needed so many other supplements, and
Mhm.
it was like over
Right.
$200 a month, and, like, you can't sustain that. Like, yeah, I guess some people can, but, like, I couldn't justify, like, that
Right.
kind of spending. And I know it's like I'm spending money on my health, but at the same time, I'm like, why do I need all of these supplements? So it was kind of getting to the, like, these are all still kind of band-aids. Um, so that's what
Yep.
I kind of really liked about this one, is that there wasn't a lot of
Yeah.
need for supplements.
Totally. Well, and that was my biggest frustration personally when I was walking through all of my hormone stuff. I'm like, I can't spend like $300 a month for the rest of my life. Like, supplements, in my personal and professional opinion, should be used to supplementally fill the gap, but eventually they should shift the physiology and you should not need them anymore. And so that's why it's like, okay, if we're going to, recommend a certain supplement for something, it really should be short term, except for in the cases where we're using it to fill the gap of like what your body genetically can't do. That there's a difference there. But I think especially when we're talking about hormones, it for the majority of women, it is a band-aid. And so and it doesn't actually resolve the issues, which is why, 3 months later, women still end up feeling like, okay, I have like marginal improvement, like maybe marginal improvement, but not like the long-term improvement that I was hoping for. So I love that. And I love that you talked about recognizing for yourself that you couldn't do it on your own anymore. And I think for somebody as intelligent and independent and like go getter as you are, that at least for me, that's probably one of the hardest things for me to do, is recognize when it's time to lean back into somebody else's strength, right? Or lean back into their expertise and know and trust that they're going to get you to where you need to go. So, do you feel like, kind of in your experience, do you feel like your experiences with the medical community that were negative before, do you feel like that carried in with you at all to, our working process? Did you have a little bit of that, like, is she for real? Kind of in the background of your mind? Do you
Uh,
think? I'm just
yeah,
curious.
I was gonna say, so yes and no. Like at the very beginning, it was kind of like, is this too good to be true? Is this really going to work?
Mhm.
And I feel it, and I felt like that about my other program as well. Like it's one of those that you just don't,
Mhm.
like you're starting something new, you don't know exactly what's going to happen. But I've had so many
Right.
doctors and so many people like in the medical community just tell me, like you haven't, you have infertility issues, you have this, you have that. Like it's normal for your periods to be like, for you to
Right.
have cramping during your period. And I'm like, but why? Like, why is it normal? Like that shouldn't be normal. And then they always push birth
Not normal.
control.
Yeah.
Like, and it was always birth control.
Mhm.
Like that's their solution. It was always birth control. It does, like they wouldn't
Right.
run hormone panels, they wouldn't test thyroid, like they wouldn't test any, like I really had to be like an advocate
Right.
to like see, like, is this my thyroid? Is it, like, because a lot of the symptoms I was originally having like pointed to a thyroid issue. Well, they came back normal, like within
Yeah.
normal levels. So it's just one of those
Totally.
like it was like, do you like, I know, and that's probably the medical community in itself, is that, like this is what they know to do. And, birth control
Right.
is their solution. But I always, like, I started questioning, like, but why? Like, why is like, there's so many, like, if you read the side effects of birth control, like there's so many issues. And I'm like, why do people,
Right.
like continue on with this?
Yep.
And it's no wonder like so many people have issues getting pregnant, because like birth control, I feel like messed up your body.
Yep.
And so,
It
so
does. And I will just tell you, you touched on something here that's really, I think, really powerful, because if you are working with a practitioner who does not appreciate your questions, like, and they get frustrated with you, well, just listen to me because I'm the expert, but they're
Mhm.
not actually willing to be like, why do we normalize that? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, that you need to find somebody who does, because those, it's kind of like my daughter's wired like that. And I'm kind of wired like that, where it's like I have this insatiable need to understand why. And because there are certain things, really, like just like you said, that shouldn't be tolerated, that we're tolerating because we've been told to, not because it's actually good for us. That would be like a chiropractor ignoring back pain, like, oh, I'm just in pain all the time. They say, oh yeah, that's normal. No, it's not normal. So why are we, there's a reason why women have pain, and it's inflammation, it's hormone overload, and sometimes it's endometriosis. So I think even you, like, having that tenacity to ask those better questions, and not in a mean way, but just like, I just really want to understand why this is happening, like, why is this happening in my body? So so I commend you for that, because questions are good. In my opinion, questions are good. I love when people want to understand what's happening in their body. So will you share, you went through this whole happy hormones process, and share a little bit about what do you feel was the most impactful piece of that process? Because obviously there's phases of healing that every single woman goes through. You mentioned like having support and knowing that you could ask questions, but what do you feel like was the most impactful for you personally, as you went through that process?
Personally, I think a lot of it was documenting everything that, number one, I was eating and how I was feeling and how my mood was. Like, I feel like the documentation that I had at the beginning was really obnoxious and annoying, because like I had to do it every day. And but now that I'm looking back on it, I'm really thankful that I documented everything. Like, I documented all of my symptoms. I looked at every
Right.
single food I was eating. I put in a chart just so that I could see like what's causing a headache, or what, like what am I seeing after I eat this, or so I feel like that
Yeah.
was a huge thing just on my part, as annoying as it was, but it was so helpful for me, because I could really see, and the coaches could really see like how, like what it was. And they gave feedback on like, oh, this might be caused by this, or this might be caused by this, and things that I wasn't even thinking of,
Right.
like that it could have been a cause.
Right.
Um, so I felt like that was super helpful for me. And it like just seeing everything, like when you start writing it down, it's it's kind of eye-opening, like
Yep.
what you have, and how far you've come along, just
Right.
within like 2 weeks. Like, 2 weeks ago kind of thing, it was, I was having all of this, and oh, I haven't seen any of that. Like, you just kind of like realize, oh, I haven't seen this in a while,
Right.
and which is good, because like you can tell that you're healing.
Yes.
um so just knowing that it also takes time was a huge thing for me too, like, because nothing happens overnight.
Exactly. Well, and that's one of the reasons we track, is not just to be annoying, although I know everybody feels that way. And I make you do it anyway, because I know that the outcome is going to benefit you. It's like a mom teaching their kid how to do chores, right? Like, I know it's annoying. I realize that, but you
Right.
do have to grow up to be, a self-reliant person. And so, and, that being one of our goals, by the time you're finished with that process, whether it's one-on-one coaching or the 12-week coaching program, is that you have the tools now to look over, like, let's say a month period of time, look back and be like, oh, this is what this symptom is telling me, because Andrea taught me how to assess myself, not just Andrea gave me all the answers, right? So that's what somebody who is a teacher and an equipper does, is we equip you so that it's not just fixing your hormones, it's equipping you for that. So I know that we're just about out of time, but would you mind sharing with women how you're doing now? Because you've been out of the program for about a month, maybe a little bit. It's been about a month, I think.
Yeah, it's been a little
And
over a month.
yeah, so why don't you share with the women where you're at now, how you're feeling, and now that you're kind of, that process is behind you.
That's great. So one of the biggest things was, and I had said it earlier, was every doctor had said you're not gonna get pregnant on your own. And at the end of the program, I don't even think it was 2 weeks out of the program, I took a pregnancy test and found out I was pregnant. So we were due in
Woo!
November, which is very
Yeah.
exciting. And it was kind of like a more of a disbelief. Like, it took me up until like about a week ago to like, there's really a baby in there. There's actual, like, you can see it
Yeah.
in the pictures, like, because, at the beginning, like, you just feel sick and nauseous, and you can't
Yeah.
really feel anything and like see anything, and
Right.
you're just going through the motions kind of thing. But no, I'm feeling great now. I'm just into the second trimester, so I'm very, very excited.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's so exciting. And we had just talked about this a couple weeks ago where it was like, that wasn't even your goal. Like your goal,
No,
like in your head, you
no.
couldn't even think about that being an end result, but
Nope.
that is a byproduct of healing the body, is really healthy fertility, right? And
Yep.
so it's like, yeah, to me when I see it, I'm like, well, of course, because now your hormones are healed.
Right.
But when it's very different though when you've walked through that journey, like you have had to walk through that journey.
Yeah.
And so it is shocking. And all of the clients that we've worked with that have had endometriosis that have gotten pregnant have that very same experience where it's like, I can't believe it, because this whole time my doctors have been telling me it's not possible. And
Yep.
so we all flipped out. I know in the group we were like, what? Gifts
Well,
don't
even the
quite
fertility doctor said it
capture.
wasn't
Yeah,
going to happen. Yeah, even the
exactly.
fertility doctor said so. Like you're not going to be able to do this
Right.
without added hormones. And I was just like, well, then that's just not going to be for me.
Right.
So,
Well, I'm so proud of you for pushing through, and it makes us so happy that you got even a bonus to
yeah.
the healed hormones, and no pain was a bonus baby. Yay.
Yeah. Yay.
So what would you say to women who maybe are sitting where you were, 4 or 5 months ago, where you're just like, they're just not sure what to do, not sure what steps to take, feeling frustrated with their process? What encouragement would you give to them?
I would say just trust the process and trust your body and trust what like is deep down in your gut, knowing that none of this is it should happen to a woman. Like you should
Right.
not have to deal with intense cramps or pain or anything really. So just trust your instinct and trust your body to know that you can do this naturally and not have to live in pain.
Absolutely. I love that. Well, I love it for you. I love it for your family. We can't wait to see just, I love when especially the clients that struggled with infertility when they have, a baby. I think we had 5 last year that were 5 out of 5 that were diagnosed with unexplained infertility that had babies. And it, like, nothing makes my day more, except for a magical period. The magical
Yeah.
period does make my day a lot. But
Sure.
when they post like the baby's here, and it's like, that is just, it's not all about getting pregnant and having babies. It's about having healthy pregnancies and having a healthy body to sustain that. And so we are thrilled for you. I know that this story is just going to inspire so many women who have just needed that encouragement and needed to know that there are options out there for them that don't entail, like you said, spending hundreds of dollars a month for the rest of their life on supplements, or having to do something that feels compromising to them. So thank you, Kacie, for sharing your story today. We love hearing your progress and just seeing the updates that you share with us. And thank
Thanks.
you for sharing your time with us today. This, I know, is going to touch somebody who's listening. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.